Now it is recorded, Mama. Thank you.
Okay.
Wow.
Excuse me, all the participants, can you mute yourself? Binu Sadanandan, could you please mute yourself? If you have background noise, please mute yourself. It's not worth it, worth Mama's time if we don't respect him without muting ourselves and be respectful to him, please. Hoping Sujata ji, Sujata Gopinath, could you please mute? Mini and Mini Desai, I see two Minis. Please mute yourself. Over to you, Mama.
Okay. So we'll start with Sahana Bhavatu. Om Sahana Bhavatu. Sahana Bhunaktu. Saha Virhyam Karavavahai. Tejasvinavadhi Tamastuma Vidvishavahai. Om Shanti Shanti Shanti. Mukam karodi vachalam pangum langhayate girim yatkripatamaham bhande paramananda madhavam yatkripatamaham bhande Shri Dayananda Sadgurum. Thank you all for participating. So what I will do is give you some introduction to chapter 2 of the Bhagavad Gita. And the slide that I'm showing is the Bhagavad Gita at a glance. So these are all the various topics that are discussed in the Bhagavad Gita. And so we are going to look at chapter 2 introduction. And chapter 2 is a long chapter with 72 verses. And these verses are organized in 4 topics. The Arjuna Saranagatihi, Arjuna seeking a teacher, is covered verses 1 through 10. And the teaching begins from verse number 11. Then Karma Yoga is the other topic. Karma Yoga represents the lifestyle that is conducive to gain the preparedness of the mind, what we say, Jnana Yogyata Praptihi. The mind should be able to receive this knowledge, so that requires certain prerequisite for the mind. Then Jnanam, knowledge, which is self-knowledge, that is the third topic in chapter 2. Jnana Praptihi, gaining the knowledge of the self. Verses 11 through 25 essentially describe that knowledge. Then how a person who has gained this knowledge lives. That person is referred to as a Jivan Muktaha. While living, that person is free from the bondage. So then a person who is living free from bondage can serve as an example, role model to others. So therefore, this chapter contains 18 verses describing how a Jivan Mukta Purusha, a person who has gained this Atma Jnanam or self-knowledge, how does he live in the society? So describing the characteristics of such a person, they can serve as the role model for a mumukshu or a seeker. So this is how chapter 2 is organized. And I would also say that the entire Gita Sastra or Vedanta Sastra is summarized in chapter 2. So chapter 2 is having all the topics that are discussed in the Sastra. So therefore, it is a very self-contained topic. In fact, Gita should have ended at chapter 2 itself. The reason it proceeds from 3rd chapter to the 18th chapter is because of intervening questions posed by Arjuna. Arjuna asks at the end of chapter 2 certain questions. So then Lord Krishna proceeds further, teaching in clarifying those questions. And similarly, the other chapters are also continuing. But the whole Shastra is summarized in chapter 2. So it's a very important chapter and a lengthy chapter. So a lot of care is required to study this chapter. Now, in the time that I have, I think roughly about another 45 minutes or so, I believe you meet for an hour, so I will try to pace myself in such a way, so to allow a few minutes at the end for some questions, perhaps. In order to understand chapter 2, it's very important to know what are the prakriyas, Vedantic prakriyas. Prakriya means a methodology. How Vedanta uses several methodologies to unfold the reality about oneself. And these methodologies are there. I'm not sure how to mute people, so
I know, Mom. I'm sorry. Meena ji, you have background noise. Could you please mute yourself?
Yes. Okay.
Meena Desai, Mini. So I see two other participants that are not muted. Please mute yourself. Dr. PKK, please mute yourself. Sorry,
Thank
Mom.
you. That's okay. Thank you. So the Vedantic prakriyas are models, methodologies are very important. And so I will describe them a little bit so that when you look into chapter 2, these prakriyas, you have to keep in mind how Lord Krishna very dexterously uses these prakriyas to unfold very subtle information. The most important prakriya means a model. Most important prakriya is what we say, Karana Karya Prakriya, the cause-effect model. And in this model, Brahman is the name to denote the reality. And ultimately, the Shastra is going to show that that reality is oneself. But you start with a name for that reality. So it's a namakaranam done by the Upanishad that the reality is let it be called as Brahman. And the Brahman is then presented as both the material and efficient cause of everything. Abhinna nimitta upadana karanam. Why this is important? Because when you look at things in the world, any creation for that matter, the gold, suppose let's say you take gold. Gold is the material cause of a bangle. And goldsmith is the efficient cause. In the case of the bangle, the material cause and the efficient cause are different. For example, if you go to a jeweler's shop and buy an ornament, you only bring the ornament home. You don't bring the person who made the ornament, the efficient cause. That is our general experience. But in the case of the world, the jagat that a person confronts, and the Shastra shows that Brahman, the reality, looking from the perspective of as the cause of this jagat that a person confronts, it shows that that cause is abhinna nimitta upadana karanam. I think it's frozen here.
Sorry, Mom. I'm just going to. Yeah, I was trying to just mute everybody and change the host access. I think I cannot do that without giving you the host access. I'll just give you the host.
Okay. Yeah, it's a bit complicated. And I'm not familiar with the WebEx, so
No worries, Mama. So it should be back to you. So please, can you try?
okay. I can't move the.
Can you try sharing it again?
Okay. Okay, we are back in business. Sorry about that. So the Karya, which is the gold bangle in this example, the Karya is non-separate from the Upadana Karanam. You can never separate the ornament from the gold. So the bangle is non-separate from its material cause, which is gold, and it is not independent of the cause. So the Karyam, the effect, Karanat, from the cause, Ananyat, Karyam, Karanat, Ananyat. You can never separate the ornament from its Upadana Karanam, namely the material cause. And in this example, it's gold. So you can not separate the gold and separate the ornament and look at it other than the gold. It's not possible. So then if you have multiple ornaments, all, let's say, made of gold, here you have bangles, necklace, ring, etc. All of them, if they are made of gold, that knowing that they are gold ornaments, then all the effects are as well known. If you know gold, you know all of them. So the plurality of the effects, the plurality here meaning the multiple ornaments, does not make any addition to the gold. In other words, even though your perception, you are seeing multiple ornaments, you are in fact seeing only gold. Although the appearance is you are seeing, for example, in this diagram, three things, but really speaking, you are seeing only gold. So even though there are plurality in the manifest universe, the cause is one. So this prakriya is very important. So because this is what ultimately going to reveal that the reality, if you look at the reality from the perspective of the manifest Jagat, then for the entire Jagat, notwithstanding multiplicity in the Jagat, the cause is one, ekameva. So this way, you arrive at the reality of the Jagat. So this prakriya is used quite effectively in Bhagavad Gita. So basically, to summarize, Karanam is Satyam. This alone is the truth. In all these three ornaments, the truth is only gold. So Karanam is Satyam. Then what is Karyam, the effect? And an ontological term is introduced in the Shastra, and that is very unique to the Sanatana Dharma, our Shastra. And that ontological word is called Mithya. I will talk about that a little bit later. So Karanam is Satyam, Karyam is Mithya. What that Mithya means, that the Karyam cannot exist separate from the Karan. That's all the word Mithya means. And this is the basis of a very, very important verse in chapter 2, the verse number 16. And there are other verses I have indicated here, which are all linked to this prakriya. I will make these slides available to you all later, so you can look at this carefully afterwards.
Awesome.
The second prakriya, the second model, is what we say as Sarira Traya Prakriya. So the individual, now, the previous prakriya was talking about the total. Total here means the universe, the Jagat, the world, whatever you want to call it, the empirical world, that an individual confronts. So that was the prakriya. But now I move on to the individual himself or herself. Then to describe the reality or to approach the reality of the individual, the model that is used is called Sharira Traya Prakriya. In other words, the individual is looked upon from the aspect of the body, right? There is a body, which is a physical structure. Then there is something subtle behind the body. Subtle in the sense, like the mind, which you don't see, but the mind has to be there in order for this apparatus called body mind sense complex to function. And there are senses. There is a physical aspect to the senses. For example, the eye sockets, what we say golakam, that is a physical aspect. But behind the eyes, if you look at even physiologically, there is a capacity to see. The eyes themselves don't have that capacity, but the eyes have to be backed by a mind. Right? So therefore, even a simple cursory look at the individual function, you can see that there has to be a gross structure, which is what we say, sthula sharira, the gross body. Then there has to be something subtle backing up this gross body for the function of the individual. So that we say sukshma sharira. Then what gives rise to these two, gross and subtle? So there is a karana sharira or causal body. So by analysis of these three shariras, or the experiences born out of these three shariras. In other words, if the person is awake during the wakeful hours, the person will experience the world wherein all these three are participating. In other words, without them, there cannot be any experience during the waking hours. The physical body is important, the subtle body is important, and the karana sharira. However, during the sleep time, which consists of dream and deep sleep, the sleep of a person, that avastha, that experience, consists of two segments. The one segment is the dream. Everybody dreams. And then there is an experience of deep sleep where there is no particular cognition, or in other words, there's no cognition of any particularity. But in the dream, there is an experience of a dream world, just as in the waking, there is an experience of a waking world, right? So then you analyze the dream, it looks like the physical body is not taking part in that experience. Out of the three, only two are involved, the Sukshma Sharira and the Karana Sharira. And then if you move on to the experience of deep sleep, then it is only the Karana Sharira, the other two are absent. So if you look at in this model, an individual, a person, say Jiva, that's a word that we use. So the individual's experience on a daily basis is dissected through the experiences gathered when all the three are present, or when two are present, or only one is present. So 3, 2, 1. From this analysis, you get a lot of insights about the reality of the individual. The previous prakriya gave you the insights about the jagat that the individual confronts, and this prakriya gives you an insight about the individual. So these two prakriyas are very important, and the verses 13, 14, 27, 28, they use this model to explain. Those verses are explained, or you can say those verses are explaining this model, whatever the substance of those verses are. Then there are other prakriyas that are used in the Vedanta Shastra and also in the Gita Shastra. So very quickly, I will talk about them. One is called the Avasthatraya Prakriya, which is what I briefly alluded to in the previous slide. Experience of three states of experience like waking, dream, and sleep are analyzed through the three shariras. But in explaining this, there is one other element that also is important. And that element is called the bodies, that is the subtle body, or let me start with the gross body, the subtle body, and the causal body, right? These three bodies are looked upon as an adjunct to the experiencer, namely the jiva. So these are called upadhi. Upadhi means an adjunct. So when the adjunct is present near something, then that upadhi, what it does is, it superimposes its characteristics on the proximate thing that is present close to that upadhi. So the standard example is, here I have shown an example. There is a crystal, a spatikam, and that is crystal clear. There is no particularity in that crystal. Nevertheless, when it is surrounded by all these greeneries and so there is a red flower, etc., the proximity of these things, which are called adjunct or upadhi, now you can see, because of the proximity, now you see the red and the green in the clear crystal, which are not properties of the crystal. Nevertheless, you see them because of the proximateness of the adjuncts. So this is how the experiences are driven by, not necessarily by the reality of the individual, right? But they are really driven by the upadhi. And in this case, the upadhis are the physical body. That means the proximity of the physical body gives rise to certain characteristics to that reality of the self, the individual. The proximity of the subtle body gives rise to certain peculiarities to that individual. And naturally, the proximity of the causal body gives rise to certain peculiarities. So now, in order to know what the substance is and what the adjuncts are, you have to do some discrimination. In other words, you have to learn to look at the crystal. Even though the crystal, there is red and green in the crystal, but you have to learn to look at that crystal as the crystal, not influenced or colored by the adjuncts, right? So you have to know what is that is adjunct and what is that is the substance. So this prakriya is important for that purpose. Now, there is a very important prakriya that is also very effectively used in the Gita. It's called Drik-Drishya Prakriya, the seer-seen model. Suppose if you see an object, suppose let's say I have a pen, a highlighter in my hand. So you see this object, actually the eyes see this object, and the eyes are backed by a mind. So now I recognize this object. So with reference to this object, highlighter, the object is seen, the eyes are seer, with reference to that, because the eyes are the first entry point of this object cognition. But then just the eyes themselves are not enough. There has to be a mind behind that eye. So then the mind becomes the seer, the eyes become the seen. Then what is in the mind is also known to the intellect. So the intellect becomes the seer, the mind becomes the seen. So like this, you keep going, and then there is a point of no return. Point of no return means you end up in a seer which doesn't become seen. See, in all the other cases, the outside objects are always seen. The mind is a seer, but it is also seen. It has the dual mode. The intellect is a seer and also seen, dual mode. Like this, when you trace back, you end up in consciousness which enjoys only one state. Namely, it is always the seer, never the seen. So you do this analysis until you come to that end point. So this prakriya is called Drik-Drishya Prakriya. Then there is an Adhyaropa Apavada Prakriya, which a standard Prakriya. Very briefly, I will say that you walk on a road and let's say the light is not sufficient. There is a garden hose that is lying, but because the light is not sufficient, you don't see it as a garden hose, but you see it as a coiled snake, a very long coiled snake. So then you have to reject that superimposed snake on the garden hose and see the garden hose as the garden hose. So this is called Adhyaropa apavada prakriya. So use of these prakriyas are very, very important in unfolding the subject matter. And Bhagavad Gita, it won't say in so many words that these prakriyas are used, but the verses that are there in chapter 2, the underpinning of the material that is unfolded by those verses, the underpinning is based on these prakriyas. So if you understand these prakriyas quite well, and if you learn to look at each verse in chapter 2a, how is this explained, then it will be very easy to comprehend. Now, in the next 5-10 minutes, I will explain to you an analysis of looking at the individual. We looked at the Jagat with the Karana Karya Prakriya, then the individual. Then we have to now look at the relationship between the individual and the total. The total is the Jagat. The individual is the individual with a body, mind, sense apparatus. So the microcosm, what we say Vyashti, that is the individual. Then we will explain how this microcosm functions and show its relationship to the macrocosm, the total. Okay. Now, so imagine this is an example. That with the example, then I will lead you to the Drashtanta, what I am trying to exemplify. So suppose you imagine a sun, a bright sun, S-U-N sun, right? It is shining brightly. And if there is a mirror, happens to be in the midst of that sunlight, okay, that mirror will reflect that sunlight. And you can see the objects that are in the path of that reflected light. This mirror has this inherent property to reflect that light. Okay? Now, you extend this to the body, mind, sense apparatus. Okay? So here what I say, now you have equivalent to the sun, what I say, the original consciousness or the chit. The chit is the light principle. It is the principle which lights up objects, okay, just like the sun. It is what makes the objects cognized. Okay, for now that is sufficient background. So with that we will proceed. Now the mirror, lo and behold, the mind, which is basically substance, but has the capacity, just like that mirror, has the capacity to reflect this consciousness. Okay? So I use the symbol RM. R stands for reflecting, M stands for a medium, not necessarily mirror, but a reflecting medium. And that medium is the Antakarana or the mind, right? Then the light that is reflected, just in the mirror case, the consciousness that is reflected through the mind is what we say Chidabhasa. It is reflected consciousness. I used the small c to distinguish it from this capital C. Okay? This Chidabhasa is a reflected consciousness. Just like you see the objects under this reflected light from the mirror, all the cognitions takes place with this Chidabhasa. Right? The Chidabhasa is responsible for the cognitions, although the Chidabhasa gaining its light from the original consciousness. Okay, so ultimately it is this which is lighting up, but not directly participating in lighting up these cognitions. And there are two types of cognitions: the I cognition, namely the subject cognition, and this cognition, the object cognition. These are the only two cognitions in this world. There's no other third cognition. Everything is centered around all your comprehension, all your vyavahara transactions, the way all of us lead our lives is based on only these two cognitions. There is no third cognition. The I cognition, the subject cognition, and this cognition, the object cognition. Now, if you do the analysis of the Drigdrishya, which the seer and seen, that prakriya, then you can see very quickly, this is seen only, the object. The subject can be a seen or seer, depending upon who takes the role of the subject. At one instant, the eyes become the subject because it's what sees the object. Then the mind becomes the subject because it is what sees the eyes. Then the mind becomes the object and the intellect becomes the subject. Like this, you proceed, and ultimately, the seer is only this consciousness. The subject cognitions, the eye cognition is both seen and seer. Now I draw a line, a red line, separating these two realms. The two things I separate, right? And everything to the right of this red line is called anatma, not self. Atma is the self. So really, Atma, the self, is only this original consciousness, nothing to do with this apparatus body, mind, sense complex, which is what is represented by the RM. The mind and sense complex is what is represented by RM. Body is inert, it doesn't reflect. The mind is needed to reflect, etc. So everything falls under the category of anatma. Now, I'm going to give you a further insight into this. So if you now, from the reference to this red line, everything to the right of the red line, which is anatma, are all witnessed, including the subject. It's all witnessed, sakshyam. And the witness who is witnessing is sakshi. But this is a temporary name I give. Because I'm witnessing something, I now put a label on this OC as a witness or a sakshi. But this is only from the point of view of looking at the anatma. Okay? Now I'm going to give you an equation. So now this individual jiva, right, is really this original consciousness, the reality, plus the mirror, which is the antakarana, or the mind. And the moment the mirror is there in the path of the sun, it will reflect. Similarly, the mind reflects. So the RM and RC are like a pair. They always occur together. You can't have the mind and not the Chidabhasa, and you can't have the Chidabhasa without the mind, right? It's called Sagaja Tadatmiya. They are inherently, there is a sambandha. Okay? These three things together, these two are within brackets, but these three, OC, RM, RC, is what we say as a jiva. Now we look at, so in this analysis, Atma, Anatma, Viveka is what is needed. Now you look at the macrocosm, which is the samashti. Now the total, right? Same thing. Now I know the Brahman, the reality, which is described as Satyam, Jnanam, Anantam, which is really basically reduces into existence principle. Anything that exists in the world cannot exist without this principle. And what is existent is evident, and that nothing can be called evidence unless there is a knowledge principle. And then the existence and the knowledge together, which has no limitations due to time and space, becomes the total whole, impartite whole, and that is called Anantam or Ananta, the happiness principle. This happiness principle is responsible for any happiness, and that principle is part of this macrocosm, the reality, which we say the OC. So the OC that we saw in the previous slide is the same OC, which I'm going to show you that it is the same OC. That OC has these three principles. The principle, by that I mean like gravity. Gravity is a principle. Similar to that, here I say an existence principle, knowledge principle, happiness principle. And there is a time, space, and causality, which we say Maya, right? It is in the place of the mirror, the antakarana in the case of the individual. But now here in the situation with the reference to the total, the Maya acts as a mirror. Then there's a reflection. Now you have the total Jagat, an empirical or phenomenological or an apparitional reality with variegated names and forms. And the causal factor, when there is a reflection through the Maya, Maya is the medium. Because it is the macrocosm, I use the capital M, and capital C, reflected consciousness, nevertheless reflected, but I use the capital C to indicate the causal factor. Now you have another equation. This equation, this causal factor, you can call Ishvara. The causal factor is what is called as Ishvara. What is that Ishvara? It's the same OC. Now within brackets, there's RM and RC. What that means is whenever there is Maya, there will be an RC. Whenever there is an RC, there is Maya. It is inseparable association. Right? So now you have an equation for Ishvara, an equation for Jiva. Then with this, we analyze the orders of reality. So very quickly, I will go through this. The absolute reality is what we say Paramarthika Satta. Then there is a Vyavaharika or empirical reality called the RC. Note the capital C, it's RC. That is called Ishvara Srishti, right? That RC, RM together with OC is called Ishvara. So the phenomenological world is Ishvara Srishti. The reality is, it is, therefore I see. And everybody will see the same thing. So therefore it is, therefore I see. Then with the small c, the reflected consciousness, there is a subjective reality that is called Pradibhasika Satta. And that called Jiva Srishti. There is an Ishvara Srishti, but then I also have, the Jiva also has the power to create, like in the dream, for example. I see, therefore it is. That is the reality of this Satta. Like a dream or a rope snake example. Now, Pujya Swamiji is very fond of saying, you reduce this Jiva Srishti or subjective reality, which will bring you more and more into the objective reality. So in the path of this realization, if you will, in the path of the mumukshu, the seeker, the first step, the first migration is to move from the Jiva Srishti to the Ishvara Srishti, or move away from the subjective reality that one projects to a more empirical, objective reality. And that's what he would call, he's fond of calling it as bringing Ishvara into one's life. You grow into God consciousness. Then ultimately, you have to know the reality of that Ishvara. Then you will discover the fact that the reality of Ishvara is in fact the reality of oneself, because of the factor OC being common. So this is the famous Mahavakya, Tat Tvam Asi. Tvam is the individual, the microcosm, Vyashti. Tat is the total, the macrocosm or Samashti. So that is the equation. Now, how does that equation sound to you? It is really equating Jiva to Ishvara. Even though how such an equation is possible is what you will question, but the Shastra insists that this is the reality. The Swarupa, or the reality of Jiva, is in fact the Swarupa, or the reality of Ishvara. So this is the ultimate equation representing this knowledge. So you can ask the question, how? So now with the thing that I have set up for you, it is fairly easy to see that. Now I substitute my equations for Jiva and Ishvara. OC, then this bracketed RM, the mirror, which is the Antakarana, and the reflected Chidabhasa. This pair, Ishvara is OC, and this pair, the Maya and the consciousness. Now the capital M is the Maya, and the capital C stands for Ishvara. Now remember the model that I showed you, where the Upadhi plays an important role. So we say that these are all incidental Upadhis giving rise to their own characteristics superimposed on the reality OC. So the incidental Upadhis are negated. Then you really have Jiva is also OC. Ishvara is also OC. That is, the reality of Jiva is the OC. Reality of Ishvara is OC. This is like saying wave is equal to ocean, because the reality of wave is water, H2O. The reality of ocean is also water, H2O. So from the point of view of H2O or water, wave is equal to ocean. From the point of view of gold, an ornament like a necklace is equal to a bangle. So if you write an equation, say they are made of gold, If you write an equation, necklace is equal to bangle, that equation is correct because the necklace is made of gold. The bangle is also made of gold. So from the gold viewpoint, from the gold drishtiya, swarna drishtiya, you have only swarnam, not necklace and bangle. So this is how this equation proceeds. And chapter 2 sets the background for understanding this equation. And then the rest of the Gita is further elaboration of the different components of this equation. So it is said that Gita 18 chapters are divided into three groups of 6. They called Shatka. Shatka means 6 chapters. It's a Shatka. So there are 3 Shatkas, 3 groups of 6. So the first Prathama Shatka is an analysis of the Twampada, namely the individual. The Dvitiya Shatka from 7 through the 12, those 6 chapters, is examination of Tat or Ishvara. Then from 13 through 18, the last Shatka, Tritiya Shatka, is showing the Asipada, which is the equal sign is called Asi here, that equating the Tat and Tvam. So this is how Gita is organized. Gita is divided into 3 Shatkas of 6 groups of 6, of 3 groups of 6 chapters, and each group represents the components of this Mahavakya, showing the identity between the microcosm and the macrocosm, or the individual and the total, or Jiva and Ishvara. So this is how Gita proceeds. So I think probably I will stop here at this juncture because I don't know how long you have your session. So I will probably break here, and then if there are any questions, I'll be very happy to answer and help you with it.
Awesome. Thank you, Mama. I think we have another 9 minutes for all the questions. So does anybody have questions? Please unmute yourself and ask.
I have a question. Some of the
Yeah.
chapters in chapter 2, some of the shlokas were not mentioned in the 4 sections that you spoke about. At the beginning, the Karma Yoga, the Jnana Yoga, when you listed the verses, some verses were left out, I think. I wondered
Okay.
how we
Yeah.
would summarize those.
Okay, I'm very happy that you are observing that peculiarity. Yeah, some verses are there incidentally. What we say, verses which are sankati. Sankati means a connection. So there are some verses which provide a connection between those topical areas that I mentioned. Right? So those verses are, I have not listed them, but they provide a link to go from the discussion of Jnana Yoga, the Jnana Yogyata, from Jnana Prapti to Jnana Yogyata Prapti. That connection, there are a few verses that are used, and there are some verses before introducing the Sita Pragya Lakshana or the Jivan Mukta Lakshana. So
Thank you.
they are called Sankati verses. Sankati means a connection. To go from one topic to another topic, they connect them.
Any other questions? Mama, I have one question on behalf of everybody. So what's the advantage of actually learning this Jnana Yoga? By understanding this equation, and how do we practically bring it into our lives, and what's the benefit of learning about this?
The what is the basic question is why do I have to now know the reality about myself? The reason for that is because not knowing the reality, I subject myself to all the vagaries of life. The vagaries of life, all the tribulations, trials and tribulations of life, Shukam, Dukkham. Although I seek happiness all the time, Sukha is what I seek, but that doesn't seem to be the case all the time. Dukkha comes in, and Swamiji's parlance, it is more Dukkham than Shukam. I'm easily subject to sorrow. I'm easily subject to reacting to things rather than acting upon them. So this is how a person conducts one's life, and this is what the life of becoming. All the time I'm looking for something, and even if I find whatever I'm looking for, somehow the looking doesn't seem to stop. And so this Shastra, what it tells is, if this is the experience of everybody, it's not a unique experience of any one individual. It is experience of all human beings from time immemorial. So this is how a human being undergoes a life of becoming, going through the trials and tribulations, all the time looking for search of happiness, and that's how he or she conducts life. Now, this knowledge is putting a stop to that kind of running around and then brings a bearing to life. In other words, how life should be lived. So that is the purpose, that the purpose of life is living, and how it should be lived is what this Shastra teaches. So that will be the benefit.
Thank you, Mama. Any other questions?
I have one. Okay, so this is Ratna. And you see, you said that the OC is the main thing, right? And then from there, what we see, we realize is the reflection of it. Isn't that right? Which we call as Maya.
The Maya is a factor like the mind I have, where it gets reflected. So Maya to reflecting medium to explain the total, because the total is what you confront. You confront a world. So you wonder why that world is. See, the two things one wonders about: why am I, and why is this world? Why am I experiencing this world? So the human mind is always looking for a causality. That causality is explained through Maya. And then the individual's behavior is explained through the individual's mind. So first you have to understand one's behavior in relationship to the total. So that is the model. That is the model that I showed you, is to understand these two. Once you understand that there's, as you said, only OC is there, nothing else is there, then you will relax in knowing that reality. That's all. It's just like, bangle and a necklace, to know that both are gold. So that you don't pay any preferential treatment to the necklace or a preferential treatment to the bangle, because both are gold.
Yeah. As you say, it is not the reaction that we have to be. If not, it is the action that we do so that we can see the OC.
Yeah. It is, if you understand that your reality is OC, if you understand that, then in all your actions, your reactions will be minimized.
Minimized, exactly. Yeah, thank you. That is exactly what I wanted. So our life is about the reaction to the reality.
Your life is right now the life is reaction to what you perceive to be the reality.
To the reality.
But in fact, it is not.
Yeah, thank you. Okay. That is exactly what I was
let me restate, perhaps this could help you or help anybody. Knowing the false as the false is the truth.
Mm-hmm.
You will never know the truth.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
If you say you know the truth, you defy the truth.
Yeah, that's true.
So knowing the false as the false is the truth. Now I take the false to be the truth. So I have to correct that mistake.
Exactly. Thank you. That helps a lot. Yeah, that's right. Yeah.
We have time for one more question. Does anybody have a question?
Can I ask one?
Sure.
This is Padma. When you said, that red line, and you said one side is the Atma and the other side is the Anatma, right? Mm-hmm. So when we talk about purpose of life, the purpose of life is to realize the self. So this self is this Atma on the left side, which is a reflection of the original light. Not reflection, which is the original light. Am I correct?
Yeah, the original light is you. See, one,
the Atma?
let me give you a little bit of hint, see whether it would help. I would rather not talk in abstract terms. I will say that original light is you. I won't call it as Atma. I'm describing it, but it's really you. That is what you are. You understand?
Yeah, yeah.
Yeah.
So when
I think the one thing, the trick in the understanding Gita is, it is not a message given to Arjuna. You are Arjuna. Krishna is telling you. So when I say Atma, I'm talking about you. You meaning you. Right now, if somebody tells me you, I take the body, mind, sense complex as I. Because if you say, who are you? The first response, what would I say? I am a man born in so-and-so place with a date of birth such and such, and this is all the degrees I have accomplished, etc., etc. But that's not you really, because you are all the time describing your body, mind, sense complex properties. So the Shastra wants to take that mistake away and say, hey, you are in fact that original light. The body, mind, sense complex are incidental.
Thank you. I need to ponder a little bit more, because for me, when you say self, who are you? Like, the highest purpose of life is to realize that self. So the self, I am thinking that is the Atma.
Yeah, Atma is the name, that is, Atma
Name.
means self. Atma also means body. Atma also means mind. So in the chapter 2, many places, hopefully, one will not get confused, because the term Atma is used synonymously to denote the body itself, the mind itself, the senses, and then the original consciousness, the reality.
Okay, sir. Thank you so much.
Yeah. So you have to know what Atma is we are talking about. So I avoid that nomenclature. I say the reality is me.
And we will have the benefit of just studying now Swamiji's chapter 2, which is quite long, just to explain all the 72 slokas. With this basic foundation that Mama has provided, we will get a lot more clarification while we are studying that home study course. And in between, we will also ask Mama questions if we want more additional information. Thank you so much, Mama, for your help. Just want to do a Vedic mantra for you.
Okay.
Om Dhruv Teja, sorry. Dhruvam te raja varuno dhruvam devo brihaspatihi dhruvanta indraschagnischa rashtran dharayatan dhruvam. Thank you so much, Mama, for your time. And thanks, everybody, for joining and staying on mute throughout the class. If there are more questions, please post it in the